It was 2008. The real estate market was struggling. Agents were leaving the business. Phones weren't ringing. And while all of this was happening, out of the blue, a family arrived in my back pocket. They were moving their entire family from Honduras to Houston. They didn't know the market. They didn't know the area. And better yet, they barely knew me. And over the next 15 years, they would become the most important client relationship of my career. This is the flight plan. I'm Rick Raanes, and today I'm going to tell you about the Kestenbaums. But first of all, let me take you back to 2008 because the context matters here. You see, the financial crisis had just hit, and the Houston market was holding better than most of the country. Foreclosures were starting to kick in. Several of the short sales were starting to get amplified. There was anxiety everywhere. Buyers were scared of overpaying. Sellers were nervous about getting out of their properties, and would they make enough money because the values were starting to depreciate a little bit. Houston was fortunate because we really didn't have a huge depreciation, but there was still some anxiety. And then out of the blue, I get this call that I almost didn't take seriously. And here's kind of how it all worked out. So the first contact that we had, I got an email from Ryan Cooper, who was the son-in-law. And in his email, he kind of told the story about how he was going to be moving his family. He was going to move his wife and kids, his sister-in-law and her husband and children, and his brother-in-law and his family. And they were all going to come to the United States and make a home here. And what's interesting in all this stuff is the first time they came in, we had a chance to meet with the father-in-law. His name was Whiskey Kestenbaum, and he told some great stories. And our first lunch went extremely well. There was Whiskey, Ryan, and the brother-in-law, Alan. And so they were telling kind of some situational challenges that they were experiencing in the Honduras area. They were from the Tegucigalpa location, and this family had done very well through the years. Mr. Kestenbaum had become a home builder and built several different subdivisions in the outside regions of Tegucigalpa. He also learned how to drill for water and sold water to the families that bought into his communities. He also became the mortgage lender for these properties, where he would build the homes, sell the properties, and they would then in turn pay him for the opportunity to purchase these homes. So through the years, he was a very fortunate individual who had reaped a lot of the rewards from being a successful entrepreneur in the Honduras market. He was originally from Europe. His family had brought him to Honduras as a small child. Mr. Kestenbaum was educated at Penn State, spent his time in college at Penn State, met his wife, and decided to build a family in the Honduras area. He worked for several builders as a kid, learned the trades, and then kind of worked his way up and then became a property owner, and through the years made a little bit of money. So the Honduran government kind of relaxes a little bit. There becomes some challenges with kidnappings. And they were very nervous that because of the success that Mr. Kestenbaum had in Honduras, that it was time for him to bring his family to the American market. And so Ryan, who met his wife at SMU, Valerie, great girl, so they go back to Honduras, and they make the decision to bring Valerie, the older brother Brian, and the older brother Diana, who went by the name Tita. So Ryan, Alan, and Mr. Kestenbaum, they fly to the United States. We go to lunch one day. They're sharing all of their stories about what's going on with them and kind of what's brought them to this decision. And then we started the process of looking for a property. But I want to go back to that email, for instance. You know, you get an email one day kind of out of the blue from a potential buyer who kind of lays out a story like this. And the first thing you're thinking is number one, is it real? Number two, can it turn into anything? And I thought, you know what, I'm going to respond. And so late one night, I responded with the email, told him I was available for a call. We quickly got on the phone and scheduled the opportunity to meet for lunch that day. And I would tell you that helping this type of situation, it had its own unique challenges. You know, it's not easy relocating a family from one country to another. The fortunate thing is obviously Ryan spoke English, Alan spoke English, Valerie obviously spoke English, and so communication from a language barrier was pretty simple. However, the finding the properties presented the biggest challenge. We weren't sure what market to be in. Originally, Ryan had seen a property that I had listed that was down in the Katy area, and that's what kind of brought the connection. And inside that listing, I had put that the property needed a little bit of TLC. And so we quickly learned that they liked the home building process, kind of what my background in contracting was all about. And so it made this connection a little bit easier to kind of handle. And the commitment that I made to them that day was that I would do my absolute best to find them properties that would work for their families in locations that had great schools, quick access to the airport so that they could potentially fly back and forth to the Honduras area, and that they would be able to quickly and successfully bring their three kids to the Houston market. And then once Mr. Kestenbaum was able to finalize a few details, he wanted to bring him and his wife to the Houston area. You know, and I didn't know it then, but that call was the beginning of something that would span 15 years, nearly 20 transactions, and probably one of the most meaningful relationships of my entire career. And it all happened because I answered an email and I picked up the phone. I'm so grateful that that email didn't get passed and pushed into spam and that I missed it, because, you know, I could have really missed out on another great opportunity. So finding a home for someone who grows up in a different country isn't just a real estate transaction. So it's actually helping them understand what home means in a completely new place. Obviously, Mr. Kestenbaum had lived here before. Ryan had grown up in the Tarkington Prairie area right outside of Cleveland. But I wanted them to understand what the Woodlands was all about. And this is why they settled in the Woodlands. In the midst of a financial crisis, the Woodlands was still growing and developing. And so it was not an easy task to be able to share that, you know, here's a very successful business person and we're making offers, and how we could be successful in having our offers accepted, and not feeling like we were trying to mirror match the market with, you know, low bids and things of that nature. So I would say that was probably the biggest hurdle to overcome, because he felt like the opportunity from a list price to closing price, because he was paying cash for these properties, would have been a little bit deeper. But the Woodlands did not see the price drops that other areas were looking for. So we ended up looking for homes inside the Woodlands, kind of in a perimeter kind of area around that. Schools were important. The being access to the airport was important. And so we started pulling up all kinds of properties. We looked at several. They flew back home, and I was actually going and looking at properties, taking a bunch of pictures even before video was happening. You know, the opportunities to find the properties when they weren't here and to be able to place offers on them were somewhat challenging. And I would say the first hurdles to overcome were really about valuations and list price to closing price opportunities. So during the first few homes that we bought, we were able to close at a local title company. We had to meet a really nice guy, Paul Spielvogel, and Paul became a really good friend of the families, and we closed several deals with that particular title company. And they did a great job of also making them feel comfortable. You know, I would say wiring money, you know, conversion of money from peso to American dollar was interesting, but we were able to get it all done. And, you know, I would say that at the closing table, when we were getting our first deals done, Ryan had come up. He had power of attorney to sign for the family. But when we first came up, I remember shaking his hand and I said, you know what, Ryan, I said, I hope these are the first of very many deals that we'll be able to work together. And we kind of joked about it, and we didn't realize at that time how successful that our partnership would become through the years. But, you know, that first closing with the Kestenbaums wasn't just a commission check. It was a family planting a flag in America and saying, this is home. And what's special to me is I got to be a part of that. And what happened next is something that I would have probably never predicted. And here's what most agents don't understand about client relationships. The first transaction is typically your audition. The second transaction is a vote of confidence, and everything after that is a partnership. And the Kestenbaums voted for me, I would say, pretty close to 20 times. So first transaction was all about buying Diana's home. The second transaction was Alan's property. And the third transaction was the property for Ryan and Valerie. And we all looked at certain price points. It was a way for them to still stay close. They were in the similar area. I would say Diana wanted something that was a little bit larger for the amount of money that we could get. We had to push over into the Imperial Oaks neighborhood. and she's still 15 or 20 minutes from, she's still in that home, as a matter of fact, and still 15 to 20 minutes from the rest of the family. So we looked at all kinds of different things, and we finally settled on the 3. And then a few years later, when Mr. Kestenbaum moved back to the Woodlands area, we found a new home for him that was built by David Weekly in the Sterling Ridge area of the Woodlands, and they owned that property successfully for many, many years until, unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. And his wife is still with us, thank goodness, and she's hanging out at the house that he bought for her. So I would say after we got those first 3 properties, we were able to kind of start looking at some different things. Because they had some building backgrounds, they knew that was kind of what they wanted to do. So they had some fix and flip ideas in their mind. But, getting close to 20 transactions over 15 years, I want you to think about what that means. That means every time they had a real estate need, they called me, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Over time, we had built a really nice relationship. It wasn't just a client-agent relationship. There was a big friendships that were there. The Coopers ended up having another child once they got here. They ended up adopting a couple of kids. Being able to go through all of that with them was really something that I thoroughly enjoyed. And I want to tell you what this family means to me. And it's not just as a case study and not as a business metric, but as a human being who chose this career and wondered sometimes if it was worth it. And I would have to tell you, the Kestenbaums, like so many others, are part of why that answer is yes. And you start to think about the personal friendships. Mr. Kestenbaum and I had something in common. I lost vision in my right eye because of cancer. He also lost vision in his eye because of a situation that he had. So we had a single vision philosophy. Once he got here, he wanted to, part of his agreement with the government as his work visas was that he would buy and build properties. So he became a builder. We bought several lots. He built several homes. We consulted about those properties. And once we got those completed, we listed those properties and put families in them. And so we went on several lunches and dinners. I would go by and hang out at his house, and we would talk strategies, and we would talk about his family, and we talked about all kinds of things that he was proud of his grandkids and seeing the things that they were doing. And I would say the one thing about this family that stood out to me the most was the heart that they all have for family, and the times that they would get together, not only with the kids but with the grandkids. But when it came time to expand the family, the support that they all had for Ryan and Valerie when they made the decision to adopt a couple of kids. They adopted a sister and brother and spent time helping them. The referrals that they gave to me, other folks that were moving in from the Honduran area that were potentially going through some of those struggles, it was interesting that I had the opportunity to help them. But during all of this, there was a visit that Mr. Kestenbaum had when he went back to Honduras one time. And while he was on his way to his compound, his complex where his family or his business was and the properties that he owned, a couple of cars surrounded him and actually extracted him from his car and kidnapped him. So he spent several weeks. The kidnappers spent time in conversations with Alan. Alan made arrangements for some investigative people to go out and see what they could do to track him down. There was ransom money that was offered. The family worked through the outside of the government to help find him, and they were very successful in being able to track him down, and were able to locate him, and they made the extraction from the kidnappers, which is a really, really interesting story. It's scary. It's a scary story. It's one that why he brought his family here is what he was afraid of. And once he made it back to the United States, I'm not sure that he ever went back to Honduras. They still have businesses down there that some other outside family is taking care of, and I know that that's something that they want to work through. But I'll tell you something that's also pretty interesting is a small world. Is the other night when we were eating dinner with my fiance and her kids, and they're my kids now too. But we were kind of talking about it, and I kind of mentioned a story about the Kestenbaums, and Jessie made the comment, who is Jen's daughter. she made the comment that she knows the Kestenbaums, and there's not very many Kestenbaums in the market, and they're in this particular area. So we kind of ran the stories back and forth about what was going on, and it was interesting that even with her not knowing anything about my experiences with the Kestenbaums, she also now has a relationship with the grandson in his business who has a gym, and she actually knows the granddaughter who used to be the babysitter for my daughter Ellison. So we were a really close family, and I would tell you, if I ran into a Kestenbaum today, there's a sense of family even still. I just spent a couple hours with Ryan and Valerie the other day learning about their situation, the health concerns that Valerie's going through, and we send out big prayers to her as she's going through that. But it's fun watching her family expand, her kids having kids, and so now there's great grandkids in all of this situation, and it's a wonderful thing to be a part of, truly. A family moved from Honduras to Houston in 2008. They trusted a stranger with the biggest decisions of their life in a new country. And that stranger, which was myself, I got to watch them build something super, super extraordinary. And I don't take that lightly. And I promise you, I don't take it lightly for a single day. So here's what the Kestenbaum story taught me. And I want every agent listening, whether you're in year 1 or in year 20, I really want you to hear this. You're not in this real estate business. You're in the relationship business. Real estate is just the vehicle to provide the opportunities for much, much stronger relationships. And when you look at clients and you treat them as people and not transactions, it's a totally different thing. And I remember when I was first getting started and somebody was asking me how much money did I want to make. And obviously you think, well, I need this much for this, I need this much to cover that, so I really would like to make this much money. But one of the questions that I asked was in order to make the amount of money that I wanted to make, how many families did I need to help? And at the time, I needed to help 24 families to be able to earn the level of income that was my goal, because we knew what the average sales price was, what the average commissions were, how much I had to compensate my broker, what I would anticipate spending on fees. Having been an entrepreneur in the past, I knew that for every dollar in didn't mean you automatically put it in your pocket. It's got to go someplace. It's got to go to the IRS. It's got to go to a lot of different buckets. And I would tell you that my goal was to help people, not just go out and look at every transaction as a dollar. And I often thought about what would my real estate career look like if the Coopers and the Kestenbaums had chosen a different agent to help them. Because all of that marketing that went into not only helping them buy properties and meeting other agents and meeting other new home builders and meeting other potential buyers, all of those things were super impactful through the course of my 20 years of doing this. And here's what I would say, the one thing that an agent can do today to start building the relationships like I had with the Kestenbaum family, with somebody that you've already got in your sphere of influence, is to make the call and ask them how their family's doing. I follow a Ford plan. And when I haven't talked to somebody in a long time, or even a brand new person, in my mind, I'm always thinking of a Ford. I drive a Ford F-150. I love the Ford trucks, but the Ford acronym is something that I still think is super important today. Ford stands for family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. So you can imagine how that conversation goes when you have that first conversation with somebody, and it's like, I would call Valerie, hey, Valerie, how are you doing today? How's your family? How's everything going? Occupation, she'll answer that. You go into the occupation side of things. Well, tell me about your job. How's everything going? What's Ryan doing today? Understand you're still trying to build your business. And then you go into the recreation side of things. What are you guys doing for fun these days? How's everything with the kids, the grandkids? What are they doing for fun? And the D is the biggest part, because this is where you're still talking to them about their dreams. What are some of the things that they would like to see happen? Because as life happens, whether it's medical, family, emergencies, no matter what it may be, for personal or some of the kids or grandkids, life has a tendency to happen. But people still dream. They still dream about having investment properties. They dream about having a retirement home that they really love. They talk about upsizing, downsizing, moving some of that money to help with kids' purchases and all kinds of different things. And so talking about the dreams is what helps with the relationship side of things. And so that's what I would tell agents today is Go out, build stronger relationships, because the agents who build the longest careers in this business, they're not the ones who close the most deals. They're the ones who collect the most relationships. And I would tell you the Kestenbaums are in my collection. I'm a better agent because of them. I'm a better person because of them. And I love them dearly. And so I know that one day they'll listen to this, and I'll probably share it with them. But they've been a very important family for me. And that's the deal that turned into multiple deals that I will always say I will remember the most. That's the other thing I want to learn how to do, is stop saying so much. It's just a bad habit. So if you do it and you recognize it and you hear me do it, point a finger at me, or just kind of say, hey, Rick, you did it again, because I really want to keep in the back of my head, in the back of my mind, to stop using the word so much. I want to eliminate that. Before I let you go, if today's story made you think about a client of your own, someone in your life who deserves more from you, I want you to take that action today. I want you to pick up your phone, send them a text, make a phone call. Don't let another week go by. And if you want to know where you are in your own real estate journey right now, send me an email at rickraanesrealtor@gmail.com. Schedule some time on my calendar. It's super easy. It's www.lptchat.com. Grab 15 minutes, grab 30 minutes, and let's talk about where you are in your business and how we can help you with the flight plan that you might need to be on. No cost to do it. I love helping people make decisions in their real estate business and what they want to do with their personal business. And the last thing I would ask is that you'd share this episode with an agent you know who needs to hear it. Because you know what? I'll be back next week, and I'll have more things to share about this. I'm really looking forward to this journey on the flight plan. We'll be talking about my own personal transactions, the things that we've done to be very successful through the years, the things that I do on a daily basis, a weekly basis, and a monthly basis that helps me create the right flight plan, not only for my business, but to potentially share that with others. So please share it with others. Look forward to seeing you next week. And remember, always keep flying. Take care.